AJ Dybantsa's preference is reportedly to remain in Utah and get drafted by the Jazz, per Adam Finkelstein. And it's interesting because I'm trying to figure out who benefits from leaking this information, Caroline. You and I talk about it all the time. When the leak comes out, got to figure out who benefits from it, and then you know who leaked it. But in this situation, Washington has the first pick after winning the lottery. Utah has the second pick. AJ Dybantsa's played his college ball at BYU. He's made it clear he wanted to go someplace with no distractions. His family likes him being there. Now we're getting the report that he wants to be there. It's interesting because also I'm going to add a little bit this extra little nugget for it. Okay, we're going to add more context to this. This is AJ on the KOC show in 2025 talking about something that will blow your mind for where he wants to play. Check it out.
Whoever drafts me. I don't really have a specific team. But I mean, I just when I was talking, I just liked Wemby.
You get media trained to say whatever team drafts you now.
No, like I was watching more basketball games, and I'm like, I mean, I think I can fit in on any team. I'm just watching. I'm like, I mean, I don't know if I want to. I was saying it because like no tax, because Dallas, no, San Antonio and Orlando. But I mean, I think I could really fit in anywhere depending on my play style.
I mean, that's a good reason.
Yeah. But if you really think basketball wise, I don't know, whoever gets hopefully the number one pick.
AJ out here worried about state income taxes. What do we make of all of this, Caroline?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think I knew what state income taxes even were when I was 19 years old. So tip of the cap to all of these financially savvy young college players out there. AJ Dybantsa is very smart and is very calculated in what he says. We've had him on the show twice, and he never says the wrong thing. He never puts his foot in his mouth. He never shows his cards. He's really smart. So I don't think that he would be the one to come out and say, no, I want to stay in Utah. Although if he did, that would make a whole lot of sense, right? He spent the past couple of years in Utah. He talks about how much he loves BYU and the BYU faithful. He spent the last couple of years in high school in Utah. So if he wants to stay in a place that has at least become home for him, like I do get that. But you mentioned the source. I have been considering the source of this. I don't think it's the Utah Jazz, because why would the Jazz, who have the second overall pick, show their cards and allow any other team, whether it's Memphis or Chicago or any other team at the top of the draft, leapfrog Utah in order to grab AJ Dybantsa if that's their guy? Because the Wizards have come out and said, look, we're going to shop the number one pick around, which I think they should. They should be putting that out there. It makes the most sense for me if the Washington Wizards want this out, because they're kind of dangling AJ Dybantsa like, oh, Utah, he wants to be in Utah. Utah wants him, kind of driving up the price for the number one overall pick. If they do, in fact, want to field some offers and do, in fact, feel serious about, giving up the number one overall pick. Overall, though, I understand, the report that says AJ Dybantsa wants to stay in Utah. I get it. I get that. I understand AJ Dybantsa saying, hey, I want to avoid state income taxes. Because when you're making tens of hundreds of millions of dollars, 6% state income tax, like that's going to take a pretty big hit. But overall, Fitzy, it's not up to him. Like, this is not free agency. If AJ Dybantsa was taking an NBA free agency tour, then I would think that we could take all of those things into consideration. State income taxes, is he close to home? Where can he compete? Where can he fit into, a certain team and their constructs? But this isn't free agency. This is the draft, and it's not up to AJ Dybantsa. It is up to the Washington Wizards and the Utah Jazz and every other team picking at the top of the draft about whether they believe AJ Dybantsa fits in, and Cam Boozer and Darren Peterson and Caleb Wilson. Insert all of these young, talented players here. It's not up to them. It's up to those teams.
1,000%. And when we talk about who could have leaked this, the only benefit I see for Utah leaking it is they're trying to make it clear that AJ only wants to play in one place so that nobody decides to take him first overall, and he's just
but who cares?
Falls to second overall. But like I agree with you. And there's the video meme, whatever, going out right now where, LeBron is like, not you, anybody but you, not you, as he goes to the free throw line. That's how I felt about this report when I saw it with the Utah Jazz, because Jazz fans were collectively losing their minds a year ago when Ace Bailey reportedly didn't want to play for Utah. And the amount of times I heard people say, doesn't matter. We're going to take him if we want him. It's not up to him. It's up to us. And now we get reports, well, AJ doesn't want to play anywhere but Utah. Well, then bring him to the Jazz, not you. No, as a fan base, you do not get to celebrate this. You do not get to champion this. You do not get to spread this information because you were the same fan base a year ago complaining about the same exact type of behavior from a different player. So we're not going to allow that level of hypocrisy around here. At the end of the day, where he wants to play doesn't matter. And I even hear the concept on taxes, and this is where my life as a touring musician comes into play. I have a lot of knowledge on how state-by-state taxes work, and a lot of people don't realize this, but you're taxed. Most of us, if you live in a state, you pay your state income taxes. You understand that. And right now, frankly, so much of the time that he spends in NIL, he being AJ Dybantsa, he's mostly in and around Utah. So most of his money is being made there. He's not being paid specifically to play games in specific states. So I understand why this is on his mind. When you start playing in the NBA, you pay taxes in every single city that you play games in. So every time you play in New York, you still have to pay a New York tax. In fact, oftentimes they talk about the fact that Tennessee doesn't have state income tax. That's true, but there are still jock taxes, as they call them, applied to games that take place in Nashville. So taxes still hit. Realistically, the difference on this, I had ChatGPT do the math for me. If AJ Dybantsa was selected number 1 overall by Washington versus being selected number 1 overall, same spot by Utah, what would the tax difference be for him? It would only be on the games that were played at home. So it's only half the NBA schedule to start with. And then from that difference, it works out to be about $500,000 a year total. On his rookie contract, it would be a $500,000 difference per year to be drafted by Washington tax-wise versus being drafted by Utah. So even though we make a big deal of it, then you got to ask yourself from an athlete standpoint, can I make up $500,000 in the Washington, D.C. metro area, making appearances and doing other ads on billboards, doing radio, doing shows? Can I make up more than $500,000 in opportunity? How often do we sit here and say, oh, you should want to play for this team or in this city because there's more opportunity? There's more financial opportunity in the Washington, D.C. district, I'm sorry, for AJ Dybantsa than there is, I'm sorry, in the state of Utah. So it's short-sighted even to look at taxes as part of this. So to me, I'm listening to this and I'm rolling my eyes at all of it. I don't really care where AJ wants to go. Washington shouldn't care where he wants to go. Washington, to do their analysis, if he's the top player on the board, take him and let everybody else kiss their butts on the way out the door.
I think where taxes really do come into play is when you're talking about two very stark differences. Talked a lot about this when I was doing radio in Nashville. Of course, Tennessee, a no state income tax state. I worked for the radio affiliate of the Nashville Predators. We talked a lot of hockey, and there were free agents that would be deciding between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Nashville Predators. Well, we're talking about one of the most expensive cities to live in North America with incredibly high taxes. You're talking about two different currencies. So however you get your paycheck, there's going to be a conversion rate. You're going to lose some of it. And then you're talking about Nashville, where there's no state income tax. The cost of living is so much lower that there's probably a difference of millions of dollars of what you actually take home, even though you mentioned, your paycheck in certain cities, your paycheck in different countries is going to be different. You're going to be taxed that way. But still, if you're claiming residency in a non-state income tax state versus Canada, that's going to be a massive difference. But to your point, the Washington, D.C. area, whether you're living in D.C. proper, which has incredibly high income tax, or Maryland or Virginia, the DMV area versus Utah, I mean, yes, there's going to be differences of percentage points, absolutely. And yes, there's going to be differences of, let's say, $500,000, which sounds like a lot of money to me. I don't want to lose $500,000 in taxes. But when you're making an obscene and absurd amount of money that AJ Dybantsa is going to be making in the NBA, the difference is negligent. So I do think the tax conversation comes up if you're talking about the Orlando Magic versus the Toronto Raptors. But there are other cities where it's like, okay, is it really that big of a difference? Like, are you really going to, go to one city or another just based off of the difference of tens of thousands or maybe just a couple $100,000? I doubt it. I do think there's almost an argument to be made here about, kind of the NIL era in college, that I think there's a really beautiful thing that's happening with young college athletes and that they're feeling empowered, that they have a voice, that they are business people. The transfer portal allows you to take control of your story and of your own narrative, that you can negotiate some of these deals. You can negotiate your contract. Like we just heard it. There was one SEC head coach that said that a recruit asked if a hot tub and a sauna could be built in his apartment. Like these players are asking for these things because there's a lot of schools and coaches coaches that'll say, yes, whatever it takes. So now we're kind of seeing that bleed into the professional level where those kind of demands just don't really exist, just aren't really allowed. Because in the college world, you're living in the wild, wild west. You can ask for literally anything. In the NBA world, you get paid tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, and you're living in a CBA world. You're living in a union world where those demands just simply will not be tolerated. So I'm not saying that AJ Dybantsa can't express his needs or his wants, or any other player can't say, hey, I want to play here, I don't want to play here. You can have those feelings and you can have those wants and needs, but they will not be catered to. And professional organizations will not bend the knee to you as much as maybe your college program did.
And that's a great point. Also, it's just going to take so much, I think, adjustment for guys coming out of college because they are used to, getting paid through NIL, which is not the same. And I know this is where we argue about the semantics of this, but like, getting paid NIL money is not the same as when you get contracted to play in the NBA. The way all of that is handled is different. And you're right, the adjustment to all of it, like according to some reports coming into this season, AJ Dybantsa was getting as much as $7 million from BYU. Like we've seen all sorts of numbers that are out there. So you talk about somebody that's already made generational wealth. And now that's part of why, to your point, when we were kids, we weren't worried about these things because most of us weren't in a situation as kids where we were the CEO of a company. Now, if you're a great college basketball player, you are not just a great college basketball player. You are a CEO. This is where everybody turns around then and says in an NIL world, well, this is why we got to protect these kids because they don't know how to pay taxes. I would just remind you, nobody protected me when I was lucky enough to be in a band that suddenly had a hit song. Nobody told me I was going to have to file taxes in all 50 states, Canada, and Europe. Nobody told me until I actually made a little bit of money that I was going to have to do those things. You know what I did when that happened? I had somebody look at me and say, hey, man, you better get a tax guy. And that's what I did. That's the same thing every one of these guys are doing that are playing. But you're right, Caroline. Like through this process, they're gaining information. They're learning about it. They're running empires. They're learning how to invest in businesses. They're interacting with CEOs of companies everywhere. They're starting an investment portfolio at an age where half of us were just worried about going out to frat parties and getting drunk. So it's particular, of course, if you're AJ Dybantsa and you're asked specifically where you want to play, thinking about taxes is a beautiful thing. If you want to leak where you want to play because you want to try and impact it, I don't blame you. You want to impact your destiny. But you are right. At the end of the day, this is as simple as NBA teams are going to do what's best for NBA teams. Same conversation we had about Ace Bailey. It doesn't matter where he wants to play. He's going to have to go where he has to go. If you're AJ, he's going to have to go where he has to go. And that's just an unfortunate reality. That is an adjustment. And that's part of what I think the new level of NBA rookie stardom is. It's not just, it used to be about learning how to be a pro. Now I think you already come in as a pro and you've got to learn how to be a rookie. It's a much different situation.
Do you remember all the reports that came out? I want to say it was in a book, but Caleb Williams' dad was saying, hey, if we're going to Chicago, we're going to the XFL. If we're, it made all of these demands about Caleb Williams' future. And I thought that's the craziest thing ever, that this guy would miss out on what, $55 million or whatever his rookie deal is in order to go to the XFL or the UFL. And no disrespect to the XFL or the UFL, but it's not the NFL, nor is the money that you're going to make even compared to what you're going to make in the NFL. But still, Caleb Williams' dad felt emboldened to and brazen enough to make those kinds of demands. Now, I'm not saying that that's what AJ Dybantsa is doing. Like, we're getting one report saying, hey, I might want to stay in Utah. Great. That's wonderful. I'm sure you do want to stay in Utah because Utah is a beautiful place and I have heard wonderful things about Swig. I don't blame you. I'm sure you want to stay in Utah. But we are seeing so many more demands, seeing so many more stories about these college players saying, hey, we know our value. We know our worth. We know our worth not just on the football field or on the basketball court, but we know our value from a marketing standpoint. We know our value from an NIL standpoint. And that's not just NIL and what you can make in college. That is NIL and name, image, and likeness, appearing on commercials, doing social media campaigns. These players now know what they are worth. And it really is such a beautiful thing to see 18, 19, 20-year-olds become, like real estate tycoons and become entrepreneurs and become millionaires because they're cashing in on their talent. But there always will be, or there is becoming that kind of effect in the NBA. But at the end of the day, all of these changes that we've seen in college sports and all of this empowerment that we're seeing from college athletes, the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, Major League Baseball, they're all the same. And they're all still multi-billion-dollar corporations who have collectively bargained to have control over these players coming out of college. So the players can exercise as much control as they have. At the end of the day, the Washington Wizards can say, oh, you want to stay in Utah? Too bad. You're coming to play for us.
Yeah, and I was just one more nerdy moment here. I'll remind you that most professional athletes are aware of, obviously, you don't have to be a resident of the state where you play your games.
Sure.
So as long as they maintain residence somewhere else and spend part of the offseason there, he can still be a Utah resident for all that extra money.